Welcome to Fight the Devil podcast, episode 3. My name is Luke Martino, and I'm fortunate enough to be joined by another guest on my third episode. Joining me is a man with 100 different celebrity impersonations, in particular, former and current presidents of the United States, and is so talented that I believe he could make a living through Cameo under wishing people a happy birthday, imitating Morgan Freeman. This is Tyrone, aka Big Roan.
Thank you for that, Luke. Quite frankly, it's an honor to be here. I'll do that once for you. But yeah, no, thank you for having me.
Yeah, how's that for an intro?
Oh, it's very impressive. Yeah, thank you.
No, that's all right. You have seen those people that do make a living through Cameo, whether it be
Mm, yeah. One of the guys, the impression guys I actually like a lot, his name's Matt Friend. He does a stunning impressions, and I actually get a lot of like my pointers from him on how to do like his Trump is great, his Obama is amazing. Um, I mean, you did a crash course in American politics last week, like his Mitch McConnell. Some of his American politics impressions are amazing, but then he's got stuff like his Jeff Goldblum, which Jeff Goldblum, the actual guy, invited him up on stage to go perform with him. So yeah, that's one of those guys who you see on Cameo doing those birthday wishes, and he's awesome. But yeah,
yeah. Have you ever considered it yourself?
um always been able to do impressions here and there. Like I always like because I think my voice range, like it always sits around here at normal, but it can go quite high or low, depending on what you need. And I think accents are always fun. Everyone likes to do British, American, all the usual, all the other ones in between. Yeah, it's great. I just have a fun time doing it.
No, that's great. That's great. Just a little question about that.
Mm.
When was the earliest age that you found out that you're actually pretty good at being the class clown?
I don't think I was ever the class clown per se. Um, I remember the first time doing an impression was probably after watching probably would have been after watching Forrest Gump, hearing Tom Hanks and just doing your life is like a box of chocolates. It's terrible now, but at the time it was actually okay because I don't really do that one as much. Um, with an impression, you just got to keep on saying it to yourself for a day, and then finally it'll click. It'll always start bad, but it's for me, it's more so about analyzing the speech patterns of the person. If you can get the voice is an added bonus, but like getting the speech pattern, their train of thought, that's the key to a celebrity impression more so than just sounding straight up like them. Because if you can mimic their speech pattern, people are instantly going to fill in the voice with what you're saying, if that makes sense.
Oh, that's fantastic. These is
Mm.
amazing insight into the celebrity impression
Oh yeah,
mindset,
you try.
thoughts, feelings, and ideas. And as
Mm.
we probably roll over to what we're discussing, wrestling related, one of the
Oh
best
boy.
one of the best segments we've ever seen was the Jay Lethal imitating Ric Flair on TNA.
Oh my goodness. Because that's a man who, yeah, he's gone out there. I mean, you've seen in interviews where the guy's just shitting himself, going like, I don't know what's gonna happen. And then he gets in that thing, and his impression is so good, it drives Ric Flair out of his mind. And to the point where they're having the woo off, and he's, taking his t-shirt off and doing elbow drops off it. Completely improvised as well. It's one of the most amazing bits of entertainment you've ever seen in your life.
Absolutely. I watch it at least 5 times a year. So
You
whenever I
ain't
need a good
just
laugh
be
as
what I thought, baby. Yeah, it's perfect. Although, I tell you what though, ever since Cody came back to WWE, my Ric Flair impersonation is gone because Dusty's also got that lisp. So your Dusty and your Ric Flairs kind of combine. So you're just going with a Midwestern dude with a lisp.
Oh,
That's great
if we're lucky,
stuff. That's great
if
stuff.
we're if we're lucky enough, hope we hear that later from you, Tyrone.
Yeah. But yeah, you mentioned wrestling. What are we chatting about?
Yes, so the segue is the ever so controversial CM Punk slash Philip Jack Brooks. I find, as a long-time fan and enemy of this guy, I think there's a distinguished person between who he has always been great on screen, while always
Hmm.
debacles about what's going on behind the
Hmm.
scenes, and also intertwining straight edge lifestyle, considering I'm straight edge and he had a big influence on that,
Yeah.
and my life experiences with that, which will be released in Fight the Devil book that I'm
Cool.
putting together.
Mhm.
As lifelong wrestling fans that we are, Tyrone, how did you get into wrestling, and when did CM Punk enter the mix?
I would watch little bits of it when I was about 8 or 9. So for reference, I'm 24, born in 2000. So my first sort of exposure to it, like most people my age, was through Cena. Um, and then, the Rock Cena feud that sort of gained all that mainstream attention because all of a sudden, look, the Tooth Fairy's fighting John Cena before anyone, and none of us knew about The Rock's previous time in wrestling because he was just in all the crappy Disney movies. So we were in and out of it for a bit. Everyone loved like Shawn Michaels, The Undertaker, all those guys. Um, However, then I kind of just we kind of just stopped, and then basically late 2015, early 2016, that's when I got back into it again, simply because of the fact that our family got Foxtel and there was nothing much else to watch apart from WWE. So I got into it, and this time I got like well into it. And when things got bad in WWE, all of a sudden, you find these YouTube channels and they're talking about all this independent wrestling stuff. And all of a sudden it like gives you sort of a an outlet not to be sort of like, oh, wrestling's crap. No, wrestling's actually really cool, Luke. Wrestling's awesome. You just got to
Bloody
watch it.
oath.
You just got to be of the right mindset to be able to watch it. You got to be able to, as soon as you click play or you change the channel over to the WWE stuff, you just got to be able to walk into a world where you can accept that all of this stuff is reality. Otherwise, you're just left there as a person whose mindset is, it's all fake, right? There's nothing wrong with that, but I think it's a less fun way to view things because, all the movies and TV shows we watch, what are they? They're fake too, right?
I was just about to mention that. I like to look at it like the Marvel series that's picking up popularity,
Mm,
especially the last decade. You look at all
mm,
those worlds, the multi-universe, as they call that, and wrestling has a lot of that. So
mm,
all about suspending disbelief.
mhm.
Never had an issue with that. And my introduction was the fact that my dad had taped WrestleMania 3 on VHS.
Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah.
Lots of fun. I was just enthralled by the entertainment, the different reality that it was, and the fact that it's live choreography. We get to appreciate that as we
It's a dance,
become,
yeah.
yeah. Especially if we go to the live shows like we did not long ago. You
Mhm.
really hear the slaps, the gravity
Yeah.
that can't be faked. So
That's the
I can't
thing.
get enough of it.
You got to take someone who doesn't get it, taking them to a live local event, there might not be a better way to get just to make someone appreciate at least appreciate it, just to see how much pain these guys are putting themselves through. Sure, a punch might be worked, but those people can't deny how much the getting put through a table with thumbtacks all over it's gonna hurt.
Oh yeah, yep. No, that's good, and that I reckon only works when there's that blood feud rivalry,
Mm,
which
yeah.
which most recently happened with the CM Punk storyline that he was in. And the
Yes.
second part of the question was, when did CM Punk get into the mix in your wrestling fandom?
So, oh man. Um, so as I said, like I was aware of punk when I first started. Um, However, it was kind of like background noise. Like, for example, when I say I was watching during that time of the Rock Cena feud, I was only watching the Rock Cena stuff. So I missed Money in the Bank 2011.
Right.
However, when I got back in the second time around 2015, 16, and I started getting more into the internet net side of it, I found out about what had happened in 2014, him getting done in the Royal Rumble, as well as the subsequent events of WrestleMania 30 and then the podcast, which to me, CM Punk's story might be the most well, apart from the screw job, but no one wants to hear about that for the millionth time. CM Punk's story in wrestling might be one of the most fascinating stories that the world of wrestling has ever thrown. Like it is just it's twists, turns, it's hypocrisy, it's backstage politics, it's every bit of ins and outs. And to be fair to the guy, he's completely revolutionized the way that we look at professional wrestling the way it is. I found out about his story, was like, okay, when's he coming back? Because it feels like he's coming back because everyone's talking about him, and he never did. And then 2021, I was lucky enough to get back into WWE when Roman Reigns embraced the tribal chief and the heel character, which just coincided with me discovering that, oh, Cody Rhodes did this, made this new company. I was so out of the loop that I didn't even know about AEW. And then I was back and I hear about this man. And then all of a sudden, all the rumors are like CM Punk's come back. And when he came back, that was just one of the most surreal things you've ever seen watching it. Too bad the next 2 years were the equivalent of a roller coaster that keeps on freezing when you're going through a loop to loop. But yeah, it's an insane story. Yeah. What about yourself?
It really is, Tyrone. That was perfectly summarized. I couldn't have summed that up better myself. I came along after enjoying what's known as the golden era, 80s
Mm.
slash early 90s. And I went through it in chronological order because once my dad introduced that ever historic WrestleMania 3 event, I went to my local video and DVD shop, and that featured all the old school wrestling tapes. That was the Yokozuna, Bret Hart, early Shawn Michaels time. So I was
Oh
enjoying
wow.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, oh, it was a blast of a time.
Yeah.
And being 27, I definitely say I was the last generation to enjoy that way of getting wrestling content. We are now spoiled
Yeah.
for choice with streaming services, but
Hmm.
I wished for every generation to go through that so that you can appreciate the stuff that you want to get a hold of. So I could only get what I could see in the library shelves, and this one store in Clayton called Movie Rama. That was wrestling heaven. It,
Yeah.
lo- sh-
All of like
shelves
yeah.
shelves
Oh, that's
of
awesome.
wrestling videos, and then the other parts of the aisles were DVDs. That was more the current stuff. So went through it chronologically and enjoyed that.
Hmm.
And it took me about a year, but probably about 2006, 2007 actually, because WrestleMania 23 was the first live WrestleMania that I enjoyed. And funny enough, I brought this up last week about Donald Trump being a big feature, being a big headline act
Main
of,
third.
of
Yeah,
that.
that was his one, wasn't it? 23. Yeah.
Yeah, of WrestleMania, and now of course he's going to be president for the second time. So, yeah, full circle already in the third
Hmm.
episode.
Hmm.
But no, I loved it. Again, couldn't get enough of it. CM Punk was like a minor feature in all that because you still had the big guns like Batista and Triple H and The
Yeah.
Undertaker, and
Yeah.
they were like proper larger than life heavyweights, and that was cool. But by the time I think the late 2000s, early 2010s, like yeah, Batista had hit the bricks. He's outspoken to say he didn't trust the direction of his character, and went through a fairly rough patch for about 10 or 15 years. CM Punk being the only guy who outspoken, controversial, sharp-tongued, anti-establishment.
Hmm.
Uh, all of that stuff was well needed, and I lent towards him in the early 2010s. I was going
Yeah.
through a rough time myself, trying to find my own identity through rough, a difficult time. And it sounds like he was as well, given everything that was shared in that podcast. So I
Mm.
really felt like I could relate to him. I didn't blame him for hanging it up when he did. In fact, I was very happy that he did that. But if we can trail it back to the origins of CM Punk, because there's a lot of good and there's a lot of bad.
Yeah.
To start with, his father struggled with alcoholism,
Hmm.
and that his mother has bipolar disorder.
Hmm.
So, researching that and where he's at now, it's both very much shaped who he is today. What made you relate to him when you were enjoying the catch up?
Um, Punk's like I wouldn't say that I completely relate to the guy. I relate to Punk in an element of the way he speaks at times is the way that I really wish I could speak, just to be completely unbridled and unapologetic in what you say, and to have complete conviction in everything you say and the way you say it. However, I mean, I'm sure this is stuff we'll get into along the way. Um, I now I'll admit, like, I'm not, straight edge myself, but I can definitely see like the appeal of his lifestyle and the way he lives his life, and how the choices he's made are shaped by upbringing, as is everyone's. But for me, my relatability with Punk wasn't so much relatability, but sort of like a mysticism around him. Is like, who is this man? What, like, how and why is he, more so than having that specific like ground level, like, yeah, I relate to this guy because of this, this, and this. For me, it's kind of like it was almost like trying to gain an understanding of what is still in many respects an anomaly of a human being, if that makes sense.
Definitely an anomaly. To bring more insight into what made me relate was the fact
Mm.
that I mentioned I was struggling in teenage years, because I found in high school, and as many people that when go through high school, it can be a very cliquey environment. And to know that what became my favorite wrestler, he was far from the most popular as well. Like he'd rock up with the green spiky hair, and I did a little bit of that. I didn't quite go green, but I was rocking the punk rock hair myself in the early
Yeah,
2010s at a time where no one was doing that, and I
they were going
enjoyed
the Bieber fringes.
Bieber ranches or like the wog haircuts, and
Mm.
it's not so much more of a hairstyle, but just feeling that you're confident to be yourself and stand out.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
over time, I think I've developed a good sense of confidence, and I've said how I felt. And it's funny because now I think like, oh my God, I feel like I've had many CM Punk moments in my life by standing up and having the courage to speak about what's not right, whether it be in workplaces or like family life or whatever. But
Mm.
yeah, again, at that time when he was booming and looking to change the landscape of everything, he was someone I only dreamed and wished to have the confidence to be. And I think as my adult years have progressed, I've become my own version.
Mm.
But then there's the other side
Yeah.
of punk that I don't agree with, and a lot of stories that kind of sense that he's bit of a dickhead. Let's put it that way. But
What would you be
I think it
referring
comes.
to?
We're referring to. Oh, well, there's many instances that we can chat about, but I
Yeah.
think I think it goes back to the trust issues and the origin story of that, which has been publicized before.
Mm.
The fact that when Punk and his brother got into wrestling, they started their own backyard wrestling company. They were going well. They were getting fans through the gates. They were charging people good money to see backyard wrestling. The fact that his brother walked out on him and embezzled thousands of dollars hit the bricks. You can go
Mm.
one or two ways there. I'd say you can uh, still see the good in people, or you can never see the good in people ever again. And I think that's the path that Punk has chosen.
I mean, Colt Cabana, like, personified in that thing. Like, because I don't know how much like inside baseball we want to use for your listeners, but that the Colt Cabana incident where it's he when they sued WWE after his podcast. Or would WWE sued them after Punk? See, I think that Punk is a very smart man with a very short fuse, and I think regardless of the straight edge thing, the dude has so many anger issues that he simply just hasn't gotten through. And I know a lot of people can defend him and say it's just being him, but I don't know. For me, if you need to go through any sort of litigation or sort of court appointed discussions, like I don't know, there has to be some sort of thing wrong with your actions. And I think that he is not great at accountability. Um, Above all, accountability, hypocrisy. I mean, I don't have a problem with cutting off people as soon as, if you guys have a legitimate disagreement that you feel is unrectifiable, then yeah, sure. Like you guys need to go your separate ways. But I think Punk is very much a my way or the highway kind of guy. And the Colt Cabana thing is nobody got themselves into that much trouble as Punk did doing that podcast. Punk just said everything. Colt Cabana just sat there and let it happen. Kind of like when CM Punk said some stuff and Tony Khan just sat there and let it happen. I think that there is also an element of Punk's personality that makes people put on the kitty gloves around him. And so making them go like, okay, you can do whatever you want because you're all cool with me because people love you. You are genuinely one of the most entertaining top five most entertaining full package wrestlers that we've ever seen. That's why he gets a pass to do these things. I just think that in the world being the way it is right now and everything being so knee jerk and reactionary, Punk does sometimes put his foot in his mouth a lot more often than 99% of other wrestlers do it, especially.
Yeah, I know. I'd say the same. It took me a bit of time to understand that he's also
Mm.
very flawed.
Hmm.
At a time where I was, enjoyed what he brought to the table, fair to say, hero worshipping the guy.
Yeah.
It's taken a bit to understand that, yeah, he's
Mm.
flawed just like everyone else, and it goes back to the point of either two ways, like with the whole dad suffering with alcohol. I think the story that his dad threw up was driving back home with Punk in the passenger seat, and his dad's throwing up out of the car, and he recognized that, saying, "I never want to be in that position ever." So it became straight edge, so much so that it was part of his real life gimmick in wrestling. So you can go one or two ways there. Darby Allin followed that with
Yeah.
his story. So I enjoy that because that's what I implemented, and I didn't have any of that growing up. Like it was barely any alcohol in the house, so I've enjoyed uh, that side of things. Other side, I guess, with trust issues and the my way or the highway and the kitty gloves and all that, I have wished for different routes taken for Punk because I was very we're jumping ahead here, but I was very, very invested in his AEW run. So
Hmm.
the fact that that couldn't work out when it was all lined up to really be one of the most amazing things, given his introduction to the company that he would have always wanted to be part of.
Yeah.
I find it very disappointing, but I have moved on. When you were going back and enjoying some of Punk's finest work, did you happen to get a chance of watching his indie wrestling between like 2000 to 2005?
Not so much the matches, definitely more so the promos. Because I heard the legendary things about the promos going like, I see you, fat ass. Like all this sort of amazing stuff, is the devil, the greatest trick the devil ever pulled promo,
Yeah.
some of his work there. I mean, I saw a lot of amazing work he did. Not so much the in-ring stuff, but yeah, my familiarity with him comes from his WWE work from what '07 to um definitely like 2012. 2013, 14 is kind of a blur when he's like Wolverine Punk.
You mentioned promos. One of the best promos he's ever done was the backstage one as he was preparing for his blood feud rivalry with Raven, and he was
Mhm.
in this straight edge group at the time. Funny enough, Cabana was in it, and he was really, really hyping it up, stating that Raven is everything you wished you could be when alcohol has defined you, but he's taken a path that he has opposed, built it up. The end of the promo was like, "This is straight edge." I
Yeah.
don't know if you've seen it, but it is one banger of a promo. That I'd say has related to me in my in my straight edge life because when I did decide to go straight edge in 2018 onwards, I did find it very difficult to embrace that. And Punk wasn't on the scene at that point. He was far gone from wrestling. It didn't feel like he'd ever return again.
Well,
So
that's like even after UFC fights and stuff.
anyone that's straight edge, I would love to get stories about how you cope in an environment that's not straight edge,
Hmm.
especially in a
Yeah,
time where as well where in the previous
it's
era
interesting
all they depended on was steroids and coke.
because you're on the road for that many days a year. You're throwing yourself on the mat constantly. You're getting injured consistently. So the best way to deal with that is constant medication. Sobriety would be like a horrible enemy of some of these wrestlers. Sometimes you'd be looking for anything to numb the pain. I mean, you see how like so how adverse the effects are the wrestling lifestyle, especially of like the 80s. Um, because it was like the 60s and 70s where it was okay because they weren't like doing like ridiculously high risk stuff. The more important part was protecting the business. I mean, well, then you get to the 80s and 90s where it is just, yeah, night in, pill popping, drinking consistently, mountains of drugs. Yeah. And you can see why, especially that late period. I mean, Punk coming up in WWE coincides. Well, he started to come up at the same time that a certain tragedy happened within the company that changed all of the drug policies. So, in one respect, he kind of did come into the company when things had changed actually to be more to his choice of life through the Benoit tragedy and the way that WWE instantly racked focus across. I think that Punk works best in a hardcore element with a more socially friendly backstage element, if that makes sense.
Straight edge, did any of that have any influence on you when you in terms of like introduction to alcohol, drugs, etc.?
Not really. So, like, I'll be, yeah, fully honest. Yeah, for me, it wasn't like I didn't find out about the full extent of punk until like 16, 17. Then going back and revisiting it, you find out about the straight edge lifestyle. But I think for me, at that point in life, around 18, 19, I didn't have I mean, I'll be honest, I've been lucky enough to the point where I haven't had any sort of major alcohol substance issues. Like, I'm not straight edge. I'll enjoy a drink from time to time and try not to overdo it at any point, but not so much in terms of my personal life. I know you're different, and Punk's influence on your personal life has probably been significantly greater than mine. Mine's more so just specifically through wrestling and the way I watch that rather than yeah any sort of impact on my day to day if that makes sense.
No, it's good. No, happy to hear that, Tyrone. In my case, I didn't feel like I could relate to a lot of the stuff that was going on in life, and my scope of references wasn't that broad at all. So I just continued following wrestling from when I was a kid well through into adolescence, and there were while there are other different reference points for everyone else around me, being an introvert and being insular with myself, it felt like the safest option to be straight edge, and I was very happy to do that. Probably up until I was 19, and then that all changed, and that will be discussed in my book called Fight the Devil. It was about a year or two period, a year or two breaking point of the pear shaped time in my life through hanging out with undesirables, attracting the wrong people. That
Mm.
was the breaking point there for about a 5 month stretch, and after that, I continued to have a drink every so often.
Yeah.
But once I got towards the end of 2017, I decided I don't really need any of this. I want to go back to where it all started for me, which was the idea that all of me is enough, and I don't need to rely on this for fun, entertainment, or any of that.
Mm.
So I happily did that. The start of it was very difficult because the people I was still surrounding with were reliant on that sort of stimulation on the weekends. So much so that I felt that they lived for that. And it can be very difficult to anyone that has gone through that transition from alcohol slash drugs to totally off. The biggest challenge was socially. I didn't have too much of a problem mentally or psychologically. Like I didn't sit at home thinking, oh, I could really use a bit of this or a bit of that now. It was more
Mm.
socially because friends to me are everything. To have that was very difficult. Anytime catching up every few weeks made it harder and harder to be within company without being forced into doing things you didn't want to do. From
Mm.
there, I had to cut a few people off.
Hmm.
I had to cut many people off, and by the start of 2019, I'd say I was very comfortable with that. And there were times that I did give in, about three occasions, because the pressure was too much, and it was easier to just say yes than no. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'll have one. But I can say since January of 2019, I have not had a drink or drugs in that time, and to me, it feels like 10 years. Never felt
Yeah.
cleaner, never felt happier.
No, that's awesome. That's genuinely very impressive. Like, I don't know. Yeah, that's the thing because I think our life experience is very different. In terms of what we've had to go through. But yeah, like since like pre-COVID as well, that's pretty impressive that you've been able to go for that long.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Tyrone. It really goes down to that 1 or 2 years where things really did go off the rails. And I'll
Mm.
say this, I have not smoked any of that since the Ice Age.